In this demonstration, we're going to look at testing, health checks, reporting, status, a number of things available through VMware Cloud DR. So again, we start off in our Cloud Services portal. We go to VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery Service, and we can see here on the dashboard immediately a little bit of status of what's going on. The green check marks of health, that's good. We look at our sites, similar things here we can drill into. We can drill into each site, including the SDDC that's been provisioned, and essentially make sure that there's no problems there. On protection groups, we have a clear outline of the health of each of the policies that's running from site to site. And in the DR plans, we also have an acknowledgement here of the last time compliance checks were run, the health checks, as well as the status of each of the plans. So through the dashboard, we have a number of things, and including a monitor capability. And I can narrow down, for example, just protection-related events. And let's say I want to see if there's any warnings. Maybe I've got some jobs that didn't run successfully that I might want to investigate. So as an administrator, I want to make sure I have a healthy environment. I can look at my SDDC and basically pick the topic that I want and the level of event that I want to look for, and use this high-level monitoring as well. All right, so let's go back and drill in a little bit more, the DR plans themselves. Here we take our sample application plan. We can see that we've got our continuous compliance health check, green check mark there, 29 minutes ago. At any point, I can manually run this as well. So it automatically runs every 30 minutes. If I'm looking at the health of my environment and maybe I just recently made some changes, I can manually run these checks as well. And so now we have one that's less than a minute ago. I can observe online all the checks, and there's details behind each of those. If something should be wrong, you'll get a little bit more information about what's going on. But I can also create a downloadable PDF report of my health check. So that's a starting point. This is one of the collected results that you can extract from the VMware Cloud DR environment. This is a sample compliance check report. It's essentially telling me which plan I'm looking at, when I reviewed it, when it was last checked, and each of the components in there that it's checking along. Now, if something was wrong, like I said, those green check marks would expand out and I'd have more detail. But a healthy environment's always a good start. Inside of the orchestrator are a number of reports as well. And these are failover or test reports. So anytime a plan is tested or failed over, VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery is going to capture a runbook of that event. So let's take the latest one that we just did in a recent demonstration, a failover report, no errors. I can see a summary down here in the corner. Again, I can create a PDF report, a nice downloadable asset that I can share with my team, put on file, distribute, log against my environment. Or if I just want to use it as a conversation with other team members, it has the details in it that I need. The plan summary and details when the test was run, all of the mappings that are part of that test. So if you look at the individual DR plan, the workflow steps are outlined, and then the runtime log, literally step by step, second by second, what happened as that plan executed when it was called upon. All right. I'm scrolling through this very fast here, but you can basically download one of these. And at the end, a clear error log is always a good thing. So we've got a very clean running environment here. So like I said, I have these for failover or for testing. All right. So I've got a lot of visual indicators in my environment. I've got a number of things that I can extract and download and share. I've got configuration reports. Add to that. We're going to see this is actually the plan configuration. So if I wanted to send it to somebody that didn't have access to the UI, again, I can create a downloadable report. So I've got compliance health checks, test reports, run reports, and configuration reports that I can pull out of the environment and share. They all have pretty much the same look and feel, a nice summary, and the details behind the scene. And these are great to have in your inventory or in your ongoing practices. So that whole idea of minimizing operational drift from site to site, as plans are there to stitch sites together, and as the sites move or change, you want to make sure that the plan in between is consistent and you have a way of extracting that information from the orchestrator. We're going to get into actually exercising the environment a little bit more. Obviously, if a disaster was coming, we'd want to be able to reliably do a failover. Well, one way to do that is good testing. I want to look at the plan for just a moment and look at a couple of fields that are inherent in the plan, in the plans that you can use to help with this environment. So the first is the alerts. Now you configure people to receive it. That happens to be me. I could choose to get alerts for compliance errors or when results change or a plan is being run and waiting for input, any number of things I can build into the plan. And then this is one area here that I wanted to touch base on. From a testing purpose, or well, actually any configuration aspect, I can have a test mapping and a failover mapping, and they can be different. So for example, let's say I'm testing this particular plan, and I don't want my VM network to map onto my Cloud DR network. I want to map it onto an isolated test network while I'm hashing through the details. So I have a failover mapping that I'll use in production and a test mapping that I'll use while I get things sorted out. That's all a good practice. I've made that change. I kind of want to go check the plan. So I'm going to go do a manual check on this plan. So we'll just run it here again. This just takes a moment. We'll get a confirmation that we didn't inadvertently make a change to the plan that makes it no longer consistent, but this plan still looks good. Now let's run a test. Let's see what happens when I have these changes. I'm in a test mode, so I have a couple of other options that I'm going to work through here. So one is when I pick a snapshot, by default, we're going to pick the latest snapshot. But this particular plan is tied to protection groups that have a fairly deep inventory. There's actually 62 different point in times I could pick from. Obviously, if I was just trying to fail over, the latest would be great, but I'm going to go ahead and pick a different one here just so you can see what's going on. Now, once I select that, notice here that I get a little bit of a notification here. The orchestrator says this is not the most recent snapshot available. Well, that's okay. That's what I'm trying to test a previous point in time. Maybe I've discovered something in my environment, and before declaring a disaster, I might want to say, well, maybe we've got an earlier copy of this system that doesn't have this problem. Let me roll back. I don't want the latest one. I think it's affected. So let's go back. So this is a really powerful mechanism for rolling back in time to help solve problems. We're going to deploy this into a clean slate SDDC, so it'll give us a really good indication. And we're also putting it on a test network, so we're not going to disrupt our production environment. Let's proceed. So I'm going to go ahead and select a different snapshot. One other thing I'm going to do, and during a test, I have the option of not doing the storage migration. I can run solely off of the live mount NFS. So I'm going to leave the virtual machines in this plan and any of the files that I pull back in that cloud backup, in that scale out cloud file system, our live mount NFS. It's still visible to the SDDC, but I'm not going to, in the background, move those virtual machines over into the SDDC. It's going to be a faster turnaround time. It's going to use less cloud resources, and I'm going to be able to iterate quicker if I need to. Now notice here, this one only stops at step 6. There's no migration. Let's go ahead and run the test of this plan. And I'm going to look at a couple of things while this is running. So the test is going through. It's recovering the database, the web server, my sample application that I use for pretty much all the demos. Fairly simple, straightforward, multi-VM plan. It's running through here. Let's give it a moment to get to the end. Sped this up just a little bit for the sake of the demonstration here. And we're essentially running through, okay, we're waiting for user input at this point. Before I do that, let's take a look at our environment. Here I am in the SDDC, and I'm looking at the networks. Now remember, I told this plan that during a test mode to put the virtual machines on the isolated test network, not the Cloud DR network. So that network's not affected. It could be tied back to my on-prem site. I have no disruption. I'm essentially working in a test bubble now. All right, and since I checked that, let's go ahead. That's exactly what I wanted to have happen in this test. I'm going to say all changes check out. Let's go ahead and continue. This will basically complete the steps in the test plan, and now I can clean up. Cleaning up the test is going to remove things from the SDDC. During a testing run, I do not have the ability to keep things on the SDDC. The last action of a test is to clean it up and clear it up and put it away. So I'll go ahead and acknowledge the end of this test. And at this point, I could now go take a test report, go analyze that, go down, talk to my colleagues. I've got my protection groups, my sites, everything is still running just as expected. And we've got a very sort of healthy, clean, ready environment should disaster strike. Very high level overview of health checks, reports, status monitoring, and DR plan testing. Thank you.